What would you do if a toxic workplace not only jeopardized your health but also illegally tried to strip you of your livelihood? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it, demonstrating how meticulous documentation and unwavering resolve can turn the tables on even the most ruthless adversaries. I was brought into a new company by an old friend, Liam, who was the CEO. Liam and I had a good relationship, having worked together previously. His new venture, a software company, was struggling with sales, and he headhunted me to turn things around. The company hadn't closed a single sale in 2 years. In the first year, the product was in beta, so it wasn't even ready for market. The second year, they made the critical mistake of using their tech staff to handle high-level sales to C-suite executives, which, as I saw it, was the worst possible sales model imaginable. Tech people speak a different language than buyers. Tech talks specifications, buyers talk benefits and how a product meets their needs. My strength lies in bridging that gap, translating complex tech jargon into clear, natural language that resonates with buyers and helps them understand how their needs will be met. The commute to the office was an hour and a half each way. Liam, understanding this, offered me the flexibility to work from home. The only stipulations were that I kept the sales management tool updated with prospect statuses, attended important meetings, and provided daily sales reports to the executive team. For the first month, I made the daily 3-hour round trip. This was crucial for me to establish a strong, consistent interaction with all departments, allowing me to rapidly formulate my sales strategy and build mutual confidence with the section heads. Once I had a solid grasp on the company's dynamics, I was ready to launch my sales plan. Just before I hit the ground running, Liam hired a new VP of sales, a woman I'll call Bethany, who started 4 days before my aggressive sales push began. She came from the banking industry and had a long career in sales and marketing financial products. From the moment she arrived, I disliked her. She knew absolutely nothing about technology, and I wasted an enormous amount of time trying to orient her, which was far from ideal as I desperately needed to focus on my sales strategy. Her primary value to the company, it turned out, was her strong experience in attracting financial investors. Nevertheless, I pressed forward. I traveled to a target state, spending 19 days crisscrossing it. When I returned, I had 17 contracts from buyers, totaling approximately $2 million in sales. Liam was absolutely overjoyed. 6 months later, working from home, I was truly excelling. Sales were robust, and Liam was consistently pleased. Things were looking good for the company and for me. Then came a pivotal moment. Bethany had successfully landed an investor willing to inject $6 million into the company, and they were coming into town for a discovery meeting. She specifically asked me to drive up to the office because the investors wanted to meet the salesperson. Just moments before we walked into the crucial meeting, Bethany pulled me aside. She told me she needed me to back her up on a lie she had told them. Essentially, she had doubled my sales numbers on the prospectus. I immediately told her there was no way I would do that. Her response was chilling. Liam has okayed the lie. We got to the part of the presentation where the investor was reviewing the prospectus with my inflated sales figures. He then looked directly at me and asked how many sales I was making a month. Bethany, standing behind him, was frantically waving her arms, but I was resolved. I answered truthfully. The investor looked quizzically at the document, which displayed the false number, while Bethany glared at me from behind him. A heavy silence descended upon the room. I then asked to see the document myself, and in that moment, fate seemed to align, allowing me to resolve the dilemma. I calmly explained that the first 2 numbers on the prospectus had been transposed. Flipping the first 2 digits correlated perfectly with my actual sales versus the inflated figures. The potential investor appeared satisfied, and we smoothly moved on. About a week later, I was meeting with our Chief Information Officer, a man I'll call Arthur. In his office, during our conversation, he referred to my big tits. I consider myself a resilient person, but this comment stunned me. It was utterly unexpected. That evening, I was casually chatting with my best friend, Marcus, who happens to be a lawyer, and I mentioned the incident. Marcus advised me to tell Liam so he could address it. Thinking about proper business practices, and given that we didn't have an HR department yet, I decided to report it to Bethany, my direct supervisor. As per protocol, It's worth noting that I also reported directly to Arthur in a different capacity, as my role was a somewhat ambiguous mix of sales and technology. The very next day, Liam called me. I recounted the incident, downplaying it and emphasizing that it was no big deal, but urged him to speak with Arthur to prevent it from happening again. He assured me he would handle it immediately. 2 days later, I checked in with Liam, only to find that he still hadn't spoken to Arthur because the investors were still in town. I gently pressed him to get it done, casually mentioning that my best friend, the lawyer, was the one who had encouraged me to report it, stating that any good CEO would want to know about it. I reiterated that I wasn't angry or upset. However, the only word Liam truly heard was lawyer. He exploded, furious that I was bringing a lawyer into the situation. This was Liam, my good friend, with whom I had worked for years at 2 different companies. I tried to calm him down, or so I thought, explaining that I only wanted him to speak with Arthur. I also clarified that I hadn't actually involved a lawyer. It was simply a casual conversation with Marcus, who just happened to be a criminal defense attorney. He seemed to accept this, and we ended the call. The very next day, while working as usual, I received a call from an attorney who informed me that the company had hired her regarding my sexual harassment claim. I was completely flummoxed and adamantly told her that this was incorrect, that I had no claim against the company. She insisted otherwise, and that's when everything changed, dramatically. Liam was furious with me for bringing this on when investors were evaluating the company. His anger set the tone, which quickly permeated throughout the organization. The company began to retaliate against me. Bethany made it her personal mission to make my life a living hell. She would forget to inform me about important meetings I was supposed to attend, freeze me out when I was in the office, and explicitly forbid me from speaking to Arthur. This was a major problem, as I was selling a multi-million-dollar tech product that required his input, and he was also my direct report in another capacity. She even denied me a long-planned and approved vacation. Anything she could devise to screw me over, she executed with glee. Coinciding with this workplace harassment, I developed a serious health problem that ultimately required surgery. My illness, thankfully, didn't impact my work, as I was able to continue working from home, which eased my health challenges. However, Bethany then declared that I needed to come to the office every single day, despite the 3-hour round-trip commute. You might be wondering why I didn't simply leave and find another job. The answer was critical. I desperately needed the health insurance. There was no way I could secure another job quickly enough, and I had a complex surgery scheduled that required 3 surgeons for the procedure. My doctor provided me with a note that medically excused me from the daily commute, allowing me to continue working from home. Legally, as long as my work performance didn't suffer, they couldn't force me to commute, especially since working from home was explicitly part of my initial employment contract. The night before my surgery, Bethany called to inform me that they had canceled my health insurance. After hanging up with her, I collapsed onto the floor in a faint. I was profoundly sick and utterly mentally exhausted from all the stress. The next morning, Liam frantically called, asking to speak with me. My mother, bless her, refused to let him. I was officially on leave as of that morning, and we were heading to the hospital. It turned out Liam had told their company lawyer about canceling my health insurance, and she had sharply reprimanded him, informing him that it was illegal. They immediately reinstated my insurance. During the 2 weeks I was recovering, my mom found a lawyer for me, as it was abundantly clear that something deeply improper was happening. I still needed them as an employer, as I was in no condition to rigorously job hunt while recuperating. My lawyer informed me that all the bullying and illegal actions they were taking against me were indeed against the law. Companies are prohibited from retaliating against employees who report malicious acts. He took me on, stating I had an excellent claim for retaliation. He advised me that I had to continue working there while he prepared the EEOC claim, adhering to all proper protocol. Now, it was time for me to return to work. The company had relocated during my absence, as planned, and Bethany refused to tell me where the new office was, deliberately preventing me from coming back to work. The company lawyer, however, intervened, telling them they had to inform me. So, Bethany gave me incorrect directions, causing me to be late on my first day back. I finally arrived at the new office. It looked like any other corporate space, with one glaring exception. Directly in front of Liam's glass office was a wide-open area with a single desk in the middle of it. Welcome to my new desk, I thought, with a grim internal chuckle. I was no longer allowed to do sales. In fact, I wasn't allowed to do anything at all, period. They had hired a wave of new people, and they treated me like a pariah. Bethany had apparently spread a pack of lies about me, warning them to stay away if they knew what was good for them. Since I had nothing to do but couldn't just sit there looking idle, I began meticulously documenting everything that was being done to me. As per my lawyer's advice, my note-taking was incredibly detailed. Bethany began writing me up for the most ridiculous things. Not answering my phone on the first ring, asking questions during company-wide meetings, and even for asking to see my personnel file, something employees are legally entitled to do, though not to photocopy. Each time she wrote me up, I had to sign the document. There was a space for my reply, and consistently, I wrote, "I do not agree with this assessment." This infuriated her to such an extent that she actually wrote me up again for stating that I didn't agree with her assessments. There were several instances where she called me into her office and literally began screaming at me, loudly and with fervent enthusiasm. I refused to engage. My standard, calm response to everything was simply okay, which drove her absolutely apoplectic. At one point, she was inches from my face, screaming, her face beet red. I just sat there with a dreamy expression, envisioning her blowing a vein in her head and suffering a stroke. My utter equanimity infuriated her. Still, I was in it to win it at this point. It didn't matter what new humiliation they dished out. I accepted it all with a bland expression, then went back to my desk and documented every single detail in my notebook. Bethany loathed my notebook, certain that I was doing exactly what I was doing, documenting. But because it was my personal property, she couldn't take it from me. I had to carry all my belongings with me everywhere, to company-wide meetings, to the bathroom, to lunch, because I once caught her going through my desk drawer and, outrageously, my purse, though it did bring me immense joy to write a note reading "fuck you," which I left in my backpack, rigging it so I could tell if she went into it, which she did. I withstood it all with a brave face, only breaking down once I left for the day. My attorney received many sobbing phone calls from me during this period. Finally, the day arrived when my attorney had all the evidence he needed, and I could resign. Better yet, he advised me that I didn't even have to give 2 weeks' notice. I returned from lunch and typed up my resignation letter. A single sentence, "I resign immediately." I took it to the HR guy, who had also been complicit in their malicious actions, and handed it to him. His mouth formed an O shape, and he half stood from his chair as he read it. He looked up, and I gave him a sweet-as-pie smile, said bye-bye, walked out the door, and drove home feeling incredibly fine. 1 month later, my lawyer and I were at the EEOC office, along with Liam, Bethany, and their lawyer, for the EEOC to review my claim. In my state, you can't simply file a lawsuit against a company for things like harassment and retaliation. Claims must first be evaluated by the EEOC, and only if they determine you have sufficient grounds to file a lawsuit do they issue a right to sue document. My lawyer presented my case logically and forthrightly, detailing all the evidence. It took him a full 40 minutes to go through everything. Then, the company presented their side, with allegations of my poor employment performance, along with their evidence, which consisted of all the copious write-ups Bethany had meticulously crafted. The EEOC lady then asked about the timeline of these write-ups, specifically inquiring if they occurred before or after my claim. Bethany, wearing a smug, self-satisfied smile, confidently stated that they were all prior to my claim, as noted by the dates on each document. The EEOC lady looked at my lawyer looked at me, I looked directly at Bethany, then serenely pulled out my photocopies of the documents. As I handed them to the EEOC lady, Bethany barked, "She's not supposed to have those. They're company property." I then showed the EEOC lady that the dates on Bethany's documents had clearly been altered. Bethany had made copies with blank dates, then backdated them later. You see, whenever Bethany wrote me up, I had to personally take the document to Liam to place in my personnel file, but along the way, I always stopped at the copier and made copies for myself. She never knew I was doing this. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. The EEOC lady reviewed my copies, then slowly set them down on the table. She remained silent for a long time before she finally spoke. I remember her words precisely to this day. I've seen a lot of ill treatment and illegal undertakings by both employees and employers, including forged or altered documents, she began, her voice steady and clear, but I have never seen someone so incredibly stupid to present documents this easily disproved. Not only are employees entitled to receive and keep a copy of formal write-ups, but reading these ridiculous allegations, it's obvious you are trying to manufacture your case, she continued, stating that I had a clear case for a lawsuit, and moreover, I would win it. She recommended that their side retreat to another room and determine a settlement amount to pay me immediately, or risk the lawsuit. They went to a nearby office, and I could clearly hear their lawyer dressing them down. Phrases I distinctly heard included lied to me, lied to EEOC, presenting false documents, and broke so many laws. Then, the clincher, figure out a number big enough to pay her so this doesn't go to court because you will lose. They returned with a $50,000 offer, which we accepted. My lawyer and I left, then did a football touchdown dance in the parking lot. Looking up at the EEOC window, I could see Bethany looking miserable and crying. She had just been fired. That was my first year of revenge. 20 years ago, $50,000 was a significant settlement. As one commenter noted, "This is like a novel I just couldn't put down. Thank you so much for this." Another commenter remarked, $50,000 seems a bit light based on the sales you said you were making. You let them off light. The rest is very savory revenge. Good for you. While some felt I should have asked for more money, the true satisfaction lay in what came next. I wouldn't call myself a hateful person. I usually get mad and then move on. But for Bethany, I nurtured a deep hatred and vowed to one day exact my revenge. So, I kept tabs on her. I discovered that after she was fired, she opened her own finance marketing company. Then, I waited a year before unleashing my petty delight. For the past 18 years, I've been executing a truly wonderful, soul-refreshing project. Every year, I visit her company's website and meticulously write down all the work email addresses and phone numbers for her employees. Then, I subscribe every single one of them to get more information from places like aggressive online schools and pushy online insurance companies. These are the kind of organizations that cling to your contact information longer than a gypsy's curse, constantly trying to sell you things. In recent years, I've escalated my strategy. I subscribe them to an email bomb service. This service takes an email address and instantly subscribes it to thousands of newsletters, requests for more information feeds, and other online buyers of email addresses for marketing services. I tested it with a burner email, and it absolutely wreaks havoc on your inbox, delivering thousands of emails within seconds, and they never, ever, fucking stop. You literally have to shut down the email account because it becomes unsalvageable. Each year when I go to collect the new contact information, all the previous emails have been changed to new ones. Last year, my cousin took a job in the same building as Bethany's company. I enlisted her help, and she made it a point to befriend a receptionist who worked for Bethany. After I executed my yearly plan, my cousin went to lunch with the receptionist. The receptionist was in a foul mood and explained that the entire organization was in disarray because IT had to redo all the emails. Again, it keeps happening over and over, and nobody can figure out why, she lamented. She also mentioned that the owner, Bethany, had to replace her cell phone number 3 times because of all the relentless texts and phone calls she receives whenever this happens. Sometimes Bethany would put her personal phone number on the website, which I diligently subscribed to everything under the sun. The absolute best part for me was hearing how Bethany lost a mega client because they felt her company was too often in turmoil. The thought of this warms me and keeps me cozy at night, and I sleep incredibly well. Oh, and I almost forgot a crucial detail. A Redditor's comment reminded me that if the investor had pulled out, it would have been a neat twist. That jogged my memory. The investor did pull out. Once I left the company, they couldn't replicate the same scale of sales revenue I had been generating, and the investor became skittish. The company eventually achieved success, without Bethany and Liam, but it took them significantly longer due to this entire fiasco. This story is a powerful testament to the fact that details determine success, especially when facing adversity. What steps do you think are most effective in documenting workplace misconduct? And why is meticulous record keeping so crucial in these situations?